The other day, there were two suggestions for the talk tonight. One was on meditation, the other one is how to practice Buddhism. It's more for beginners. I have a tape here on meditation, so I won't talk about meditation. This talk was given in Sydney last year, so you can keep this. So I'll talk about how to practice Buddhism today. Firstly, how do you define a Buddhist? How is a Buddhist defined? In the suttas, it is said that a Buddhist is one who takes refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha. And this taking refuge just means that you personally acknowledge that you take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. It was only later that they developed this ritual, for example in Mahayana Buddhism, where whenever you take refuge with the triple gem, you also take refuge in the teacher, the monk teacher. And in Theravada Buddhism, in original Buddhism, a monk is a Kalyana Mitta, a good friend who introduces you to the original teachings of the Buddha. And we don't really take refuge in a monk or any teacher in the original Buddhism, original teachings of the Buddha. We always only take refuge with three: the Buddha, Dhamma and the Sangha. Later in Mahayana Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism, they added a fourth, taking refuge with the teacher monk. So how does one take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha? In the Buddha, it means that we have faith in the enlightenment of the Buddha, that the Buddha is Arahant. Arahant means one who has destroyed the cycle, the wheel of existence. Sambuddha, perfectly self-enlightened one. And that he is a world knower, teacher of gods and men, unsurpassed, tamer of tameable men, thus gone one, well gone one, Sugato, etc. So we believe that the Buddha was enlightened. That is the conviction we have. That's why we take refuge in the Buddha. But how do we know that the Buddha was enlightened? For that now we have to rely on the Dhamma. Taking refuge in the Dhamma means having faith that the Dhamma is the true, the teachings about reality, that the Dhamma is true and that it leads us to enlightenment, to the ending of dukkha. And taking refuge in the Sangha, there are two types of Sangha. You can see in the suttas that during the Buddha's time, many people, when they took refuge with the triple gems, they said that they take refuge in the Buddha, the Bhagava, and then they take refuge with the Dhamma, and then they mention that they take refuge with the Bhikkhu Sangha. The Sangha means community, so the community of monks. It's often mentioned in the suttas that people take refuge in the Bhikkhu Sangha. And sometimes it is also mentioned that the Sangha refers to the Arya Sangha. Arya Sangha is the Sangha of Aryans, the 8 types of Aryans. Now in the Digha Nikaya number 16, when the Buddha, there's a Mahaparinibbana Sutta, when the Buddha was about to pass into Nibbana, Venerable Ananda, I believe, asked him, something like Bhagava, after you have passed into Nibbana and you are no more with us, whom should we take as the teacher? Because when the Buddha was in the world, they took the Buddha as a teacher. So they wanted to know whether the Buddha was going to appoint a successor. So they asked, who should we take as the teacher? And the Buddha said, take the Dhamma Vinaya as your teacher. Dhamma Vinaya. Dhamma Vinaya is the totality of the Buddha's teachings. Dhamma is the teachings on the truth about existence, and Vinaya is the monastic disciplinary code that concerns monks and nuns only. So now that the Buddha is no more with us, we take the Dhamma Vinaya as our teacher. Now, in the Sutta Anguttara Nikaya 4.180, it is defined that Dhamma refers to the suttas. They said there that Dhamma refers to the suttas. And Vinaya, we all know is the disciplinary code for monks and nuns. This sutta is very important, that Dhamma refers to the suttas, because nowadays people say Dhamma includes other books also. But from here it's very clear, Dhamma only refers to the discourses of the Buddha. And that also is actually refers to the original discourses of the Buddha. And we find when we study the Sutta Pitaka, we find that there are 5 collections, Nikayas there. And the first 4 are not contradictory. The first 4 are very consistent. So because of that, we can safely say that the first 4 Nikayas are the original teachings of the Buddha, namely the Digha Nikaya, the long discourses, the Majjhima Nikaya, medium length discourses or middle length discourses, the Sangyutta Nikaya, group discourses, they are arranged in groups according to the topic or the subject. And then Anguttara Nikaya is discourses that are grouped according to the numerical content. So these are the 4 earliest Nikayas. Now, taking refuge with the Arya Sangha, it is very difficult to tell who is an Arya, especially for lay persons. It's difficult for a person who is not an Arya to distinguish another person who is an Aryan. Now, in the Anguttara Nikaya, Sutta number 5.9.88, the Buddha said it is possible that even a very senior monk, one who has gone forth for a long time, and he might even be world-renowned, well-known monk, with a great following of lay and monastic disciples, and he is much learned, very well read in the scriptures. Even such a monk can have wrong view. And the Buddha didn't say why, but it is easy to tell why, because nowadays there are so many books that if you rely on books which are not the original teachings of the Buddha, then you can end up with wrong view. To attain right view, you should only rely on the original discourses of the Buddha, which are consistent, which does not contradict, does not have contradictory teachings. Now, in the Anguttara Nikaya 4.180 that I mentioned just now, the Buddha said, if any monk says that such and such are the teachings of the Buddha, or for that fact, any teacher, whether he's a monk or a layman, he makes some statement and he says this is the Buddha's teachings. The Buddha said, you don't welcome what he says, and you also don't scorn his words. In other words, you neither accept nor reject what he says. But instead of accepting or rejecting what he says, you compare what he says to be the Buddha's teachings with the suttas and the Vinaya. If it agrees with the sutta and the Vinaya, then we accept what he says to be the Buddha's words. But if it contradicts the original suttas and the Vinaya, then the Buddha said, throw it away, reject it straight away. Those are not the words of the Buddha, and it was wrongly taken by that person. So here, that means whenever anybody says that such and such is the teachings of the Buddha, we must always check it with the suttas to find whether that is actually the teachings of the Buddha or not. So that is taking refuge with the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha basically also means taking refuge with the original suttas of the Buddha, because from there only the original suttas of the Buddha represents the Buddha himself, represents the teachings of the Buddha, and also from there we can gauge whether a person teaches according to the Aryan teaching of the Buddha, whether that person actually has views in line with the teachings of the Buddha, so that if it is his teachings are not in line with the words of the Buddha, then you know definitely you cannot take refuge in him, because he's not an Arya.